Jedi, yeah, crown me king, tell them heathens.
Shalom, and welcome to another edition here on the Genesis 49ers page, where we say no to vague interpretations and we give thorough breakdowns.
Genesis 49ers, we back, but never moving backwards. We here to put Israel on the atlas. Y'all know the slogan. We say no to vague interpretations and give thorough breakdowns. Today's topic is going to be a goodie. Today's topic is going to be on some potent information. Today's topic, we're going to deal with, is the earth older than the sun? And why are we dealing with this topic? Because a lot of skeptics, a lot of people that go against the Bible says that it's a contradiction based on the modern solar model of our solar system. They believe that the sun had to come first, and the sun created an accretion disk and created all the planets and created the earth during that period. But I'm going to show scientifically and empirically that is not so. That is actually something that's been pushed and pushed and pushed as if it's emphatic, but I'm going to give a strong case for the biblical narrative. So we're going to begin. Did the earth exist before the sun? And we're going to deal with degrees of plausibility, right? So let's begin. The earth was a free-floating planet in the Genesis account. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So in the beginning, there was the earth and there was heaven. Now that the Lord made heaven, which is the expanse or space, and the planet Earth is what he made. So he made the expanse, or made what we know as space, right? And he made Earth in the beginning. It has no mention of stars, luminaries, or other planets. It just says earth and heaven, the expanse, right? And we know it's talking about the expanse because when we go to 2 Ezra chapter 6, verse 38 to verse 39, because some people say, oh, when he created heaven, he created everything in it. That's not what's being prescribed. That is not what's being described in the Genesis account. And here's the evidence in 2 Ezra chapter 6, verses 38 to verse 39. O Lord, thou spakest from the beginning of creation, even the first day, and said thus, let heaven and earth be made, and thy word was a perfect work. And then was the spirit, and darkness and silence was on every side. The sound of man's voice was not yet formed. So this is talking about the expanse, just space. It was just an empty medium, a vacuum. That was darkness all over the place. So there was no stars, there was no luminaries, there was no planets, there was no galaxies. It was just the expanse and the planet Earth. Now, a lot of people will read this account and say that contradicts science. We're going to show you that we have scientific evidence that this may be the case. So, before the formation or creation of stars, the formation and creation of stars were created after the planet, according to the Genesis account. In Genesis 1, verse 14, it says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. The sun, moon, and stars were created on the fourth day, according to our narrative, i.e. the biblical scriptures. But we just read on the first day, the planet and the expanse, known as space or the vacuum, right? That was created on the first day. You don't get luminaries, stars, and other planets and stuff like that until the fourth day, according to the biblical narrative. So 2 Ezra 6, verse 45 says, upon the fourth day thou commandest that the sun should shine, and the moon gave her light, and the stars should be in order. So that's when he created the luminaries in the fourth day. And a lot of people will scoff and be like, oh, how do you have the earth teeming with life and plants before the sun was made? Well, you have to understand what I'm about to bring out. So I'm going to bring empirical data that you do not need a parent star to inhibit life, and that's what the astronomers are saying. So we're going to go off scientific material. So let's go into it. So another thing before we get into it, we must understand that light predates stars. You had light before you had any luminaries, as such as stars, galaxies, so on and so forth. It says in 2 Ezra 6, verse 40, then commandest thou a fair light to come forth of thy treasures, that thy work may appear. The biblical narrative prescribes a universe that has light being in existence before the formation of stars. Astronomy yields evidence in favor of the narrative. So we have evidence in favor of that stars predate what we call stars. I mean, not stars, light predates what we call stars, galaxies, so on and so forth. You didn't have those luminary bodies in the world, I mean, in the universe. At first, you just had the expanse, you had the earth, and on that same day, the Lord said, let there be light. So let's deal with the let there be light part. It says, when we look out at the universe today, highlighted against the vast empty blackness of the sky are points of light, stars, galaxies, nebulae, and more. Yet there was a time in the distant past before any of those things had formed, just after the Big Bang, where the universe was still filled with light. So before there was any stars, according to astronomers, the universe was filled with light, just as the Bible prescribed thousands of years ago. They found this out because they studied the cosmic microwave background, and that's what we're about to read. If we look into the microwave part of the spectrum, we can find the remnants of this light today in the form of the cosmic microwave background. But even the cosmic microwave background is relatively late. We're seeing its light from 380,000 years after the Big Bang. Light, as far as we know it, existed even before that. So light even existed before that epoch, what they call the photon epoch. If you study cosmology of the universe, you have the photon epoch where the universe was filled with light, just as prescribed in the Bible when we deal with the days of creation. In the first day, you had the earth, you had the expanse, and you had light. Before there was any luminary, any star, any galaxy formed. That's exactly what they find when they study the cosmology and look into the universe itself. After centuries of investigating the origins of the universe, science has finally uncovered what physically happened to let there be light in space. And the source is medium.com, and the article is Science Uncovers the Origin of the First Light in the Universe. Let There Be Light isn't just biblical, it's science, by Ethan Siegel, and it was published on July 7, 2017. So we can clearly see that this is being drawn from a scientific source, and it agrees with the biblical narrative. Now, Big Bang, you can argue that. I don't subscribe to the Big Bang. I believe the Most High was the prime mover, and he created these things, right? It didn't just happen through an explosion, but we can all agree that the empirical data shows that light existed first. That's the point. So now, did the earth, let's get back to the earth. Did the earth exist prior to the sun? A lot of people say, how do you have a planet? Because the Bible is prescribing that a planet existed without a host star or a parent star. So what they have found in the universe is rogue planets, and defining rogue planets, right? Rogue planets are free-floating worlds drifting in space between the stars. A growing number of these odd objects have been discovered in recent years, not gravitationally tethered to any star. Now, a weird new one has been found and observed more closely, as discussed in a new peer-reviewed paper in the Astrophysical Journal on July 31st of the year 2018. This world may be unbound to a star, but it is still energetic and with a powerful magnetic field 4 million times stronger than the Earth's, and auroras more powerful than the Earth's northern lights. So this proves that you can have a planet without a star, without a host star, that has a magnetic field. Well, you know you need a magnetic field to protect the planet itself from radiation, and also it can help the planet host life. So that's more proof and evidence that you could have a free floating planet, a planet that doesn't have a star, a central star, or a host star, and still produce life on it. And the source for that is earthsky.org article, Astronomers Find Weird Rogue World with Wild Auroras. Paul Scott Anderson, August the 14th, 2018. So a lot of these discoveries are very recent. Now, let's pose the question. Is it plausible for a planet to exist without a star? Because that's the main contention with the Genesis account. A planet existing without the sun, without the star. We already acknowledged that light existed before there was a planet, and there was the expanse, which we call space. So we have light and we have a planet. We don't have a star. So let's read this. It says gravitational microlensing observation of 50 million stars in the Milky Way found 10 Jupiter-sized rogue planets. This helps scientists estimate that there are at least 2 rogue planets for every star in the galaxy. Understand that there's more. That means there's more rogue planets than there are stars, meaning planets do not need stars. Because a lot of people go with the star formation and the planet genesis, basically saying that the star needs to explode to create planets, but we have more planets than we have stars. So that's a whole nother debate. It says this means that there are potentially billions of rogue planets out there lurking silently in the dark. Many of them are likely Earth-sized too. A dead and decimated planet with no heat and light from a sun seems like the last place to look for life. However, there are ways rogue planets can retain heat and have suitable conditions for life. So the scientists, the astronomers, are saying that you can have a planet without a host star like the sun, and they can still have the potential of producing and protecting life. Because that was the main contention. That contention is gone. You don't need a host star for planet formation, and you don't need a host star to host life. Source, medium.com article is How Planets Without Stars Can Possibly Host Life on Them by Jatan Mehta, August the 10th, 2017 is the day this was published. So again, let's deal with heat retention of a rogue planet. Even though rogue planets have no stars from which to receive heat, they could still retain thick hydrogen and helium atmospheres that could trap heat left over from their formation. They can also remain geologically active for long periods of time. So what is that telling you? That a planet doesn't need a host star to retain heat, and you need heat for work, entropy, and all these things that you need for a planet to be teeming with life, like what's prescribed right after the second and third day when the plants begin to grow on the planet, and the fish and everything comes after. So we can ascertain that it is feasible. Remember, we're dealing with degrees of plausibility. So the Earth can exist before the sun, according to science, according to empirical data and what we observe in the universe. You don't need a host star. So that can no longer just be an argument to disregard the Bible. And the source is earthsky.org. The article is Astronomers Find Weird Rogue World with Wild Auroras. Paul Scott Anderson, August the 14th, 2018 is the date this was published. Now, here's another factor that the Earth came before the sun. The water is older than the sun on this planet. So it says the results suggest that up to 30 to 50% of Earth's ocean water and perhaps 60 to 100% of the water on comets originally formed in interstellar space before the sun was born. And that's what the Bible said. The Bible prescribed that water came first before the sun, because I believe on the second day he divided the waters. We see that in astronomy. We see that water is older than our sun. So right here it says, the source is space.com article, Much of Earth's Water is Older Than the Sun by Mike Wall, July 25th, 2014. So the water on the planet is older than the sun. So that's deal with the dating mechanism that they use to ascertain the age of the Earth. So we determine that the water on Earth is older than the sun. What about the Earth itself? It says they use meteorites to date the age of the Earth. The best estimate for Earth's age is based on radiometric dating of fragments from the Canyon Diablo iron meteorite. From the fragments, scientists calculated the relative abundance of elements that formed as radioactive uranium decayed over billions of years. It was not until the 1950s that the age of the universe was finally revised and put safely beyond the age of the Earth, which had at least reached its true age of 4.56 billion years. Lewis said physicists suddenly gained a new respect for geologists. So the geologists came up with this way to determine the age of the Earth, and they do it based off meteorites, not the actual Earth itself, because you don't have the rocks on the Earth dating to a certain period, and we're going to talk about that. So they use meteorites, right? And that comes from the livescience.com, and the article is How is Earth's Age Calculated by Gianna Briner. November 29, 2012 is the day they published this article. Now remember, they use meteorites, and I do not subscribe to billions of years, the Earth being billions of years, but I'm using these terms and those dates as relative dating to see what came first. Just understand that. We say no to vague interpretations and give thorough breakdowns here on this channel. But remember, they use meteorites to ascertain the age and calculate the age of the Earth. Here's the Hypatia stones. These Hypatia stones challenge the dogmatic model of the solar system. The Hypatia's abnormal composition implies that it's made up of material that existed prior to the formation of the sun and the planets in our solar system. So they have pieces of a meteorite called the Hypatia, or the Hypatia stones, that date before the formation of the sun. So if you're using meteorites to determine the age of the Earth, and we find meteorites that are older than the formation of the sun, then we can deduce that the Earth came before the sun. It's logical, using logic and reasoning. But if you're disingenuous and you want to employ special pleading, then in favor of your dogmatic model that's based loosely on evidence, and we have evidence here contradicting that, then you would ignore this. And that's what special pleading is, when you ignore evidence that is not in favor of your opinion. And the source for this is astronomy.com, and the article is The Hypatia Stones Compositions Leave Researchers Questioning Where and How It Formed by Amber Jorgensen. January 18, 2018 is the year and date that this article was published. It's all up-to-date stuff. And again, if you're going to use meteorites to ascertain the age of the Earth, then you must say that the Earth is older than the sun, because we have meteorite shards and stones that are older than the sun. The Murchison meteorite challenges the current dogmatic solar model. So we don't have one meteorite, we have another meteorite that does the same thing. And remember, they use meteorites to determine the age of the Earth because no rocks date back to that age, to that period. So they use meteorites. We have two separate situations, two separate meteorites that are older than the sun, and we're going to prove it. It says the Murchison meteorites challenge the current dogmatic solar model. Our decades later, the Murchison meteorite is still full of surprises. When this extraterrestrial hunk fell to Earth near its namesake town in Australia in 1969, people managed to salvage more than 200 pounds of it. Not only is the Murchison rich in organic compounds, it's old. Scientists believe the Murchison meteorite could have originated before the sun was formed. So again, if we're going to use the methodology that they've been using, that meteorites determine the age of the Earth, we have two separate meteorites, the Murchison meteorite and also the Hypatia stones. They're both attesting to the Earth being older than our sun, if we're going to employ the same methodology that they've been using since the 50s. Unless you want to just throw it away now, since the evidence yields results that are not in favor of your dogmatic model. And the source for that is CBSNews.com. Article Ancient Meteorite May Be Older Than the Sun by Andrew Mosman. February the 18th, 2010 is when this article was published. The reason why they use meteorites to ascertain the age of the Earth. So this is why they use the meteorites, because they propose a Hadean time period, which is 4.6 to 4 billion years ago, according to them. Again, I do not agree with these dates. I'm just using relative dating to see what came first. It says it's not a geological period as such. No rocks on the Earth are this old, except for meteorites. During Hadean time, the solar system was forming, probably within a large cloud of gas and dust around the sun, called an accretion disk. So, this is why they use meteorites, because there's no rocks on the Earth as old as the meteorites. So they say, okay, the meteorites have to be the measuring stick, if you will, to determine the age of the Earth. And again, we've seen two separate the Murchison meteorite and the Hypatia stones, both are older than the sun. So with this methodology, we can determine that the age of the Earth is older than the sun based off that alone. The water on the Earth is older than the sun, and the meteorites on the Earth are older than the sun. So we can deduce that the Earth is older than the sun and came before the sun with empirical data, as we just observed. We all observed. So the biblical narrative has merit, man. It has merit. We can prove it. We can show and prove evidence that points towards the biblical narrative and biblical paradigm. And the source for that is UCMP Berkeley.edu. The geological time scale, the Archean and Hadean periods. And again, they have no rocks that date to the Hadean period, so they use meteorites to determine the age of the Earth and when the Earth was formed. And when the Earth was formed, if we go according to the meteorites, the Hypatia stones and the Murchison meteorite, then you will have to say that the Earth is older than the sun, just like the Bible said. He created heaven and earth, and that heaven was the expanse, and the earth was without form or void, and that would make the Earth older than the sun, because according to the biblical narrative, the sun was not formed or created until the fourth day. So the conclusion of the matter is, it is very feasible for a planet to exist without a parent star. The existence of rogue planets attests to this fact. Astronomers agree that a planet without a parent star can retain heat and support life. So all of these objections to the biblical narrative is thrown out the window now. Light predates the formation of stars, therefore a parent star is not necessary for the origin of the planet Earth, because we brought out that light existed before any star was formed. During the photon epoch, and we can also see evidence of the lights that came from the cosmic microwave background, because before they were microwaves, it was light. The biblical account of creation, the placement of the Earth before the stars, can be supported with scientific evidence, and we showed that with the age of the water. The age of the water is estimated to be older than the sun, and we also showed you through the Hypatia stone and Murchison meteorite that the age of the Earth, if we determine it through meteorites, are older than the sun. The Hypatia stones and the Murchison meteorites are both specimens older than the sun. Therefore, we can deduce that the Earth predates the sun, just as the Bible prescribes. All right, so we got the conclusion of the matter. We can see that we have empirical data that supports our model. But I want to end this video with this quote here. I want to remove the bounds of scientism, because a lot of people deal with scientism. They think, oh well, everything that scientists say is true, or whatever opinion they have. No, you're putting bounds on it, because you have a certain dogmatic methodology. But according to this, it says, by its very nature, science knows no boundaries. So you're contradicting science when you say stuff like that. Walling off any group for any reason from full participation damages the entire enterprise of science. We must be scientists without borders, by Rocky, and that's a quote from Rocky Cole. So you got to be scientists without borders, man. Y'all made all these borders against the biblical narrative. Oh, how you gonna have life without a sun or without a star? How you gonna have light before stars? When we look at the scientific evidence and the empirical data, the things we can observe, we can show that the Earth can exist without a host star, and we can show that light existed before any stars, just as the Bible says, thousands of years ago when it was written down by these quote-unquote goat herders, as y'all say. And I should do a video on that. These people are very literate, and these people are very wise. Obviously, they knew how the universe was formed. They knew how the planet. They knew the genesis of the planet. They knew light existed before stars. They knew also, if you go into the Genesis account, the Earth was submerged in water at first. That scientists are saying that the early Earth was submerged in water. I mean, we can go on and go on, but this is another edition here on Genesis 49ers. Subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what you thought about the video, whether it be negative or positive, whether it's support or it's against the premise. I want to hear your opinion. I want to see it, what you guys think about it. Share this video on the social media platforms, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Get these videos out there to the masses. Like the late great Nas said. He said, F what they teach in classes, I'ma reach the masses. So that's what we trying to do here in Genesis 49ers. We trying to up the ante, so to speak, up the bar. We're trying to show our people, the Israelite community, that we have scholarship, that we cite sources. We provide citation and we provide empirical data for our claims. That's the standard that I'm trying to set with this channel, and that's been the goal since the beginning and the inception of this channel. So with that, I'm going to say shalom. Genesis 49ers signing off.